All right, good morning and welcome back to the program where we explore the fascinating world of New York City real estate and the people all in it. I would like to welcome my listeners and viewers all around the world and in the United States. Today, we are talking about winning pitches, being more than just data points and charts. It's a compelling story that captivates from the start to finish. Yet crafting such a pitch is an art a few have mastered, leading to lackluster presentations that leave audiences unconvinced and disinterested. These are Joanne's words, who is a master storyteller and author. More on her in a minute. I'm Vince Rocco. Let's go behind the headlines and get the real story behind everything in this industry. This is Talking New York Real Estate. And at this hour, crafting a compelling pitch is crucial for capturing attention and making your ideas memorable by unlocking the power of your ideas with an unforgettable narrative. In a world filled with information overload, learning how promises to equip you with the essential skills to make your ideas truly stand out. Learn to master the art of storytelling to forge genuine connections with your audience and keep them engaged. No one wants to fall asleep or lose interest in a speaker. Unleashing the power of words is unleashing the power of words one conversation at a time. Those are my words. We will have all that and so much more as Talking New York Real Estate gets underway on this Tuesday morning. And in the news this morning, until recently, sellers have not been negotiable because they essentially held most of the cards. Without much competition from other sellers, there's no reason to accept a lower bid or cut prices. But that situation is expected to change, according to a new report from Kenny Lee. He's an economist at StreetEasy. He notes that a typical New York City property that sold in December of 2023 received 95.8% of its initial asking price, slightly below the 96.2% rate of December of 2022. Lee says he expects sellers will likely pick up on this widening gap between sales prices and initial asking prices, known as the sale-to-list price ratio. And as sellers are forced to compete for buyers, Lee sees buyers finding more room for negotiation, leading sellers to respond by setting more competitive initial asking prices. The end result, a gradual decline in New York City's median asking price this year. And sponsor units dominated a solid week for signed deals in Manhattan's luxury market last week. The total signed contracts passed 20 for the first time in a month. That according to Olshan Realty's report covering through January 14th. Sponsor units were responsible for half of those deals, possibly signaling a continuation of a trend seen in 2023 when 54% of all luxury condos were sponsor sales. And in Manhattan, rental prices finally stabilized last month, according to marketing reports. The borough's median price was $4,050 in December, remaining unchanged year over year and increasing just 1.3% on a monthly basis. That according to the report. New leases were also up annually for the second month in a row, rising by 14.2%. And finally, Alec Baldwin's Hamptons home has returned to the market at $18.995 million, touting the rarity of his 5-acre property in Amagansett. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to build a generational compound in Amagansett, says listing agent Scott Bradley of Saunders and Associates. He has the listing with Michael Sinkay, also of Saunders. The Baldwin home first went on the market in September of 2022 for $29 million. It was pulled off the market in September of 2023. And in recent breaking news, a grand jury in New Mexico indicted Alec Baldwin last Friday on a charge of involuntary manslaughter, reviving the criminal case against him in the fatal shooting of cinematographer more than 2 years ago on the set of the film Rust, when a gun he was rehearsing with went off. The local district attorney's initial prosecution against Baldwin fell apart and the initial charge was dismissed. The incident, which came exactly 1 year after the initial involuntary manslaughter case against him, was just announced, and it's the latest reversal of fortune for Mr. Baldwin. And with me today are Danae Montesi from William Ravis, Stephanie Harnish, also from William Ravis, Ryan Kaplan from Corcoran, and Joanne Tumbracas, storyteller and NYU professor. Joanne has been calling herself a storyteller since before it was a trendy thing to do. She has delivered thousands of pitches in every industry sector over the course of a very successful 25-year career that has included working at CBS and Time Warner Cable as a media sales and marketing executive. She prides herself that she never sold anybody anything, Sure. But she did learn to tell a very convincing story that closed a lot of business. She uses those same skills today as an assistant professor of marketing at NYU's School of Professional Studies, as the host of her podcast, Marketing, Mindfulness, and Martinis, and as the author of several books, including her latest, Crafting Your Pitch. You can follow her on most social media networks at Joanne Tambrakis, and she joins me now. Okay, good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the program, as I said earlier. And Joanne Tambrakis is with me. So, Joanne, I do want to start with you. You are considered a subject matter expert in a whole bunch of things, right? Mm-hmm. So we want to talk about personal branding. We want to talk about content marketing. We want to talk about social media, one of the things that's near and dear to my heart. And I teach that from time to time. I'm sure not as good as you. But you say, one of the things that when I was reading your stuff, you say, in the end, it's all about humans connecting to humans. Tell us what you mean by that and how important that is. Because I read that and thought, wow. That's very true.
Well, yes, thank you so much. And it's really just such a pleasure to be here with all of you today. I was just speaking about this yesterday. I had a brand new class that I'm teaching at NYU in digital marketing yesterday. And we talk about all of these new technologies that we have available to us. But at the end of the day, we're still doing the same things. Whether it's marketing or whether it's actually selling, which I personally think that marketing is part of selling, but I'm sure many people would argue with me about that because you don't get to sell unless you've been marketing ahead of time. But we're still trying to connect with another human being. And some of us get so caught up in all of these tools that we forget that part. And that's really what I mean by it. I mean, it's just really pretty simple in that respect.
You know, one of the comments I make when I'm teaching social media is I go back to my first sales manager at Halstead, so 22 years ago. Mm-hmm. And when he sat me down, I came from corporate America. I had no idea what, selling real estate was all about. And I used the word selling in our talk day one. And he looked at me and he got very stern. And he said, one thing you have to remember, you're not a salesperson. You're not a salesperson. You're a marketing person. And I thought, I am. Okay. You're going to erase 10 or 15 years of my selling experience, and he kept hammering that point home, and he was right. It took me a while, of course, to understand that we are really responsible for bringing people in. Yeah. Apartments sell themselves. I know agents sometimes don't want to hear that, but apartments sell themselves. I mean, any 10-year-old can open and close doors and open cupboards and show the bathroom. Who cares, right? It's like, my hashtag is what? So what? Who cares? It's that easy. We have to have the marketing to bring people in. When they're in, of course, you have to be professional and you have to make sure that they get what you want them to get. But sales, no. It's really all about marketing and human connections, whether it's your personal life or whether it's your business world. But talk a little bit about branding, because also in social media class, I try and emphasize the point how important branding is for all of us as agents. Because when I open the class, I look at people and I say, who are you? Who are you? And who are you? And immediately they're like, what? What do you mean, who am I? I know who I am. Who are you? Tell me. Because you can't brand yourself unless you know who you are.
This is very true. Can I just go back to what you said about selling first?
Sure.
Because I actually have a chapter in my book on this, is to get over this word, because people think it's a dirty word. And essentially, telling a story, marketing, what you do is selling. Everything is a pitch. We talk about that. We may have
we'll talk about that in a minute.
We'll talk about that. So I think that still is the core. That still is what we're trying to do. We're still, no matter what part of this we're in, we're still trying to generate revenue for somebody. Get them interested first. If they don't pay attention to you first, which goes back to the branding part, you're not going to get them to pay. They're not going to listen to anything else. Mm-hmm. I talk about that in terms of a story. It's that hook. What is going to pull you in? What's going to pull somebody in to make them pay attention? Because it's really noisy out there. And so much of what we see, we totally ignore it. It just scroll. Facebook used to have a thing, I don't know if they still use it, where they would help brands with their campaigns to do something that they called a thumb stopper. What's going to make you actually stop while you're scrolling? Because those mobile devices are probably the biggest part of how everything has changed as well.
Correct. We're going to talk about pitches in a minute. But I want to, you also say, though, that your ideas are worth it, because sometimes when we're putting together content, whether it's for a pitch or presentation for an exclusive or just writing a listing agreement, you say all the time that your ideas are worth it. Compared to what? Like, in other words, my ideas I think are worth it, but what would I compare that to? Someone else's, or just writing terrible content?
Well, I think when people are trying to get their story across, to connect with someone, to sell per se, is that if we're not really convinced that our idea is important, that what we have is important, we're not going to convince anyone of anything. You know, I see that you're all seasoned salespeople in the room.
Superstars.
Superstars, there you go. And I consider myself, because that's what I did in my corporate life, as a seasoned salesperson. But I see this a lot, especially with young people, is that they're not really convinced that they've got a great idea. And so that's part of what it is. You have to really know, you have to own it. You have to own who you are, you have to own your story. Otherwise, and what you folks do is so personal, because you're talking about convincing someone to buy a home. I mean, that's
We're going to get into all of that.
but that is really, you know, where that connection that you can make with your prospective client and really understanding them. And there's a lot of that goes on now, is that no one wants to really figure out who it is that they're trying to reach. I mean, you really have to be very, I think, very empathetic to be good at what you do.
Yes.
I totally agree. Joanne's book, by the way, is called Crafting Your Pitch, and it's available on Amazon or anywhere where you get your books. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. In the book, you know, you reference selling without selling, the rule of three, and the hook. Explain.
Well, the hook is,
Because
again,
these things all caught my attention before I started looking at the book and said, okay, well, what does she mean by that? Because they're compelling, right? The hook. We all look for that hook in no matter what we do in our marketing presentations, right?
Well, just the whole thing, and my whole premise, story is what really connects us, right? And if you know, I say if you read a book, but not everyone reads anymore. But if you're even watching something as simple as a Netflix film, within that first few minutes, you're going to know whether you're going to sit there for a while or not. Something pulled you in, something hooked you in. So that's really important even in our everyday connections. What are you going to do to connect with that person? What was else in there? The rule of three you talked about?
The rule of three.
The rule of three is, you know, my feeling is if you don't have three good reasons why somebody should be doing something or whatever it is to convince, you don't have a story. You don't
And
have
selling
an idea.
without selling, I mean, obviously made the point before, we're not really selling you, we're giving you some ideas
They're
as
showing
to...
you a reason. You know, nobody wants to be marketed to, you know,
Right.
which is, nobody ever did. It's worse than ever. Certainly Gen Z, forget about it. You know, they don't want to be marketed to, but they do want to be engaged. And if you can give them a reason why something is important to pull them in, once you pull them in, the rest, you know, that becomes just part of the story.
I got news for you. I'm not Gen Z, clearly, but I don't want to be marketed to either.
No, it's just true. I say
You go
that
into
all-
a store and they start yapping in your ear. I'm like, all right, hold on, calm down, relax. I want you, I'll come and get you.
Nobody wants to be told what to do,
Right.
but we want to be engaged.
Correct.
So that's part of what I mean by that hook. What's going to pull somebody in? What's going to make someone listen to this podcast, what you share it on social media?
Absolutely, especially
Outside the fact that all of us
especially
are
when you get to social media. Ryan, how often do you have to make sales pitches for an exclusive listing, right? I mean, a lot of our business is referral, but oftentimes we do go and still have to do a quasi-pitch, right? So what are some of the common obstacles you come up with in your preparation for, and then maybe in your delivery when you're in front of that client or clients at the moment?
Yeah, it's actually interesting. So recently, I mean, it's only, the second or third week of January right now, and I've done 5 pitches this year already,
Impressive.
which speaks, I think, quite a bit to what's happening in the market. I've won them all, which has been a good thing. So
Of course you
a
have.
good streak. After I say this now, I'll lose the next one. But I think what the obstacles are, New York real estate is very nuanced. People think, oh, there's so much of it. You know, it's cookie cutter. It's this unit on that floor sold for this, price per square foot equation, therefore your unit is worth that. Every building has a different story. Every unit has a view change, has different finishes. Buildings next door to each other can be in different financial situations. Buildings can have a neighbor that's about to get developed and eclipse their view versus one building that has protected views. So the obstacle of pitches is you can't go in thinking I've sold in this neighborhood a million times. I know exactly what this is worth. You have to investigate every single listing beforehand like a detective if you want to come with a comprehensive pitch and to convince somebody that you should be marketing it, because it's never the same.
It's never the same. That's very true statement. And every apartment does have its own story. Even within a building where you've sold in the line before, whatever, and it could be renovated, not renovated, whatever it may be, view blockage, as you say. So I get that. Danae, what do you think when you're out there and you get a call or a referral and you're sitting down and you're trying to put together a presentation, if you do that, what are the obstacles that you may come up with in, well, what do I say to this person? What do I not say to this person? And we all kind of know where they want to go price-wise, right?
Yep.
It's usually never where we want them to be.
Yeah. Yep.
So we have to kind of think about that. How do you do it?
So I think that the two biggest prongs for us is the marketing and the price. So before I actually meet with the seller, Stephanie and I, we usually discuss what we're going to talk about. We're like a chameleon when we walk in. We read the room, and if our natural personalities can come out and we can walk around and really look at photos and get to know them in the process, that's us. We are not transactional brokers. We're emotional brokers.
Oh my God, so well said.
So if something's
I
not
love that.
selling, I'm going down a laborious road, emotional roller coaster. Forget
It's
about
true.
them. I need therapy. I need it to sell. So whatever we have to do, we're willing to spend the money on. If we have to stage ourselves, if we have to do, to your point about marketing, geofencing, do a holistic approach so that someone's reading the New York Times, the listing shows up, the seller knows we're selling. But if we think that somebody is interviewing 5 brokers, we come with our 5-prong approach. If we are the only one maybe being interviewed, we come in and we just try to explain the 2 most important parts and how we're going to be the advisors. You bet on the jockey, not the horse. So if we have a good relationship, then we're going to make this sell together.
Wow. Okay, we can end right there.
No, can I just, I love
Please.
what you said about reading the room, because I think a lot of people forget that when they're selling or pitching or whatever it is that they're doing in press, trying to convince someone to listen to them, is that you really have to read the room. You have to know who you're speaking to. And again, I think in what you folks do in real estate, it's you're talking about getting someone into a home. Like, where's that connection with all that research that you talked about? And the person, because not every person's going to be happy in that particular neighborhood or building or apartment.
And that's kind of what how I reacted to what Danae said, at the start of her talk there, because based on Ryan's, knowing the neighborhood, knowing the building, knowing the data, knowing whatever, and then walking in, the two of you, and reading the room, okay? And I loved when you said, so will that allow us to be us? Or do we have to be, somebody that we really aren't? And so my best way of relating to a prospective, seller or even a buyer is to just be who I am, right? Because if I can't be who I am, we're probably not going to work well together.
Exactly.
Right? And so I think you'll benefit by, I hope, who I am or who you are or who, all of us are, if we're able to show our personality. And that is like the key. I can't believe you said that because it's so perfect. Marketing skills, though. Stephanie, when you do get the listing and they say, okay, fine, we're going to sign with you. We want you guys to help us, whatever. When you sit back and think, okay, so now we have to do photographs, we have to do floor plan, all of that stuff, what are the catches? What are the hooks, as Joanne says, in our content or in our promotion of this listing? How do we get that out there in a way where we're going to pay attention and say, I want to see that? Whether it's on social media, whether it's on the internet, on your listing agreement, whatever. How do you do that? I mean, what goes into that?
Absolutely. So to Joanne's point, exactly, it really is a story, and it's a different story for each apartment. So Danae and I really work to try to figure out who is purchasing this apartment in theory. Who are all the people we want to market to, and how best do we show this apartment? Is it colorful? Is it virtually staging this room as a home office? Is it we spend a lot of time going through that. And then of course you want to push all the marketing out to as many people as possible. So that's your multi-pronged approach, right? It's going to be picking up the phone and calling. That's something that I think is really important. And I think a lot of our generation as millennials is really scared of the phone or something. It's a lot of texting. It's a lot of, so we pick up the phone, you call, you text, you get every broker
Person
make
to
those,
person.
Exactly, which I think is maybe old school. I'm not sure. But
It's the right school.
There we go. So for us, and then social media is the next step, right? So we're actually really excited about this kind of new frontier with TikTok, with these trending sounds, with, making sure we are getting as many eyes and as many people into this home as possible, because that's going to bring the highest and best price for our seller. So, and then of course it's video marketing, which we love to do. And we were talking, we've done a few different, modes of marketing. Sometimes we pay, thousands of dollars out of our own pocket to do these drone shots of, the Woolworth Tower, the pull away, the, great. And other times we found success with one of our listings a few years ago in Hell's Kitchen, where it was just a casual video and us just chatting about the property. We ended up having ads run on this, and it was simple. Cost $0, took us 15 minutes to make. We were just riffing off of each other and showing our personality. And the person who purchased that apartment, sight unseen. So sight unseen. So I think it's holistic approach. Who's coming into this apartment? Hopefully.
And it depends, as he said before, it depends on the apartment too. Every apartment has a different story, and every neighborhood has a different story. So you might need to promote something here, but not necessarily so heavily here, for whatever the reasons are.
It
right?
wouldn't have worked at the Woolworth Tower if we had the two of us just yucking it up,
No, exactly.
This restaurant down the street, I don't think that was. It certainly wasn't.
Maybe not today, but down the road, reaching Gen Z, it might. As they start to actually have money to spend.
Well, we're seeing that. We're seeing that in our industry.
We don't
anyway.
know how that's really going to shift and change.
And they like that casual style. I mean, everything. I love TikTok, and everything I see, it's not. They don't want the posed. They don't want, and that's going to be the next generation of buyers that's coming up. Right. They want to see.
They want the natural,
the real.
100%, and I think it's correct. I mean, because that's where we are today, right?
I have a young client who made tens of millions of dollars in crypto, and I'm no joke. And he and we were introduced, and we've done a couple of showings. We've been working together for a while, and after we got comfortable, he said we were talking about brokers and how they present authenticity. A lot of what we were just covering. And to the point about the younger generations preferring something casual, he said, if you had shown up here in a suit, I wouldn't have hired you, which I thought was really interesting because, again, that's reading the room too. It's knowing who you're about to go pitch to and work with.
That's another very good observation because I've said that for years. There are times where you could wear a suit, need to wear a suit, right? And there are times where your client is very casual and they expect you to be the same. It's like that intimidation factor. They don't want to feel like, you're making them look bad because they're not all dressed up. You can go in a lot of different directions. All right, we have to take a break. We have so much more on the other side of the break when we come back. So don't go anywhere. Okay, we're back. I just wanted to make a comment. I found Ryan a couple of months ago. I mean, I've always known about his name, but I found him based on his marketing capabilities and his email blasting. I get all of them, and I thought, wow. Same with you. I've known Danae for a long time, and Stephanie. I can tell when even just a simple email blast is taken up a couple of notches in professionalism, in content, the way it's presented in that email. So I forgot why we were looking for something, and I said, I know this guy, and I like his stuff, and let's call him in and let's see what happens. And here he is, right? So at the end of the right. So and I'm an agent. Right, so can you imagine the end user who is looking at this stuff, or the clients who are looking at this stuff? So on that note, how do you leverage technology? Okay, because I worked in technology for 20 years before real estate. IBM, greatest company at that time in the world, right? Before Microsoft and all that. Technology is always right here in our phones and our iPads, wherever, in our minds with all the apps now, TikTok, whatever. How do we, leverage technology to work for us as agents?
Yeah,
because there's so much of it.
I think for me, the tech has benefited my career in a multitude of ways. Social media is an obvious answer. I fortunately was able to build a pretty strong following on social media, a lot of real estate professionals. And I think back to agents and brokers of decades past where you're sending out tremendous amount of mailers and putting your face on bus stops. And it's like, why? And what kind of,
Why, he says.
It wasn't a choice then.
I guess.
You had no choice. Right?
Yeah.
Well, fair. So, okay. But, social media is the bus bench of today. It's less expensive. It can be free. You guys were just telling a great story about, and the reach is incredible. I did 2 collaborations last year with. Have you seen Caleb Simpson on TikTok? He goes up to people and say, "How much do you pay in rent? Can I come see your butt?" He's one of the foremost influencers in real estate in the world right now. And
Genius,
we had
right?
We met at a Harry Potter party. Exactly. Actually, it's a different story. But right before he
do tell.
Yeah. Do we have time? So it was a few months before he had blown up. We have mutual friends. friends, actually, it was one of my clients who I sold a loft to, had this party before they renovated it. So we had met. And then he started blowing up, and I said, you know what? He has a captive audience of people interested in real estate. I reached out and I said, why don't we do some, videos together? I'll take you into some really, spectacular properties you wouldn't have had access to. And similarly, I'll be, in front of your audience, which again is a captive audience of people interested in real estate. And we did 2 together, and our videos collectively got 5 million views.
Wow.
How many people would I have had to mail to get in front of 5 million
so
people?
true.
That's how much would you have to spend? How much?
Right.
Like it's
Truly.
like,
Truly.
Really
so I think
creative
that's how you
collaboration.
that's how you use tech too.
Genius, but when you think about the expense, I'm old enough in the business to remember. We still get budgets as agents, but what are you going to do with the little bit of budget that you get, even if it's a big budget? It can go in a minute if you spend it foolishly. But I always say to people, but what are you spending it on? You're wasting. We don't advertise in the Times anymore. We don't advertise in New York Magazine or New Yorker or Hamptons Magazine. It's all free on social media. And social media is a big grab for anybody, whether you're an agent or whether you're a consumer looking to buy something. New York City real estate around the world is global reach because of the fascination with New York City real estate. Nothing else. You want to,
Seth Godin,
and it's free.
Seth Godin actually wrote a great blog about this because it's very hard to get organic reach on social media anymore. So if I had a budget and there was something specific that, even something like your TikTok video that you really want to target the right group, then I would put the money there to make it paid social as opposed to organic social. The social networks are in the business of making money for themselves. And they design the algorithm so people will spend money. So that's what I would do with it. Say it's a really high end. Well, where are those people? Maybe they're on LinkedIn. I don't know if you use LinkedIn at all, but I would think for really high end.
I've always said that if you're going to be on social media, you need to be on all of the platforms.
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
Well,
all
it's
of
very
them.
hard to do that anymore because there's so many of them. But
Right, but you LinkedIn definitely, Instagram for sure, Facebook. A lot of people turn their nose up at Facebook. Oh, that's for old people. Well, you kidding me?
I know.
Old people spend money.
Right, yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
and a lot of it.
The boomers are the richest.
Correct, and we're going to do a story next week on the boomers. Well, I don't want to get into it, but we're going to talk about that next week. But the bottom line is there's something for everybody on all of the apps that are out there and available to us. I get it. They want you to pay for the advertising. That's fine. It's still going to be a lot less than if you're paying the New York Times or the New York Magazine or whatever it is. I always say you've got to figure out ways to leverage all of the technologies that are available to us. Look, I look at some people, they got 56,000 followers. On TikTok, 900,000 followers. Even if you get 1% of their 900,000 people looking at your stuff, you hit a home run, right? You're Patrick Mahomes. Come on now.
It's the engagement more so than the numbers of followers.
Of course it is.
So that video you were talking about sounds really engaging, and so does the one that you did. So you're going to get more traction from that than some. Just because you have a lot of followers doesn't mean anyone's
Right.
paying attention.
I
to
understand it.
So it's just some little.
But-
Again, I teach social media and the brand too. So
Well,
I'm sorry if I'm starting
but-
to sound like my professor self.
Well, that's okay, but look, they're facts. But there are opportunities
Yes,
to
absolutely.
still reach somebody out there. Stephanie, let me ask you, because pitching to clients and sellers, and even when you're trying to get a buy or whatever, how do you actively network your business, you guys as a team, Ryan, in his team? How do you network within our industry with other agents? Because I think it's equally important to get all of us on board. Like I said, I found him. I've known you. I follow you guys because your stuff is like, wow. I don't do that. And I mean that sincerely. I don't do that with a lot of people because it, kind of flashes by and I'm like, oh, him again, or her again, or it doesn't, interest me because of the way it's presented. So how do you network, aside from social media, with other agents that you come in contact with on a weekly basis, daily basis?
It's a great question. So, I think we all have great brokerages, so that's an easy thing. Referral business is some of our best business. We value those relationships. You put in the time to get to know from the different offices and who's transacting between Connecticut, New York City, Scarsdale, New York City, Naples, New York City. It's New York City. Everybody wants a piece of this dream is kind of, I think, what we're selling constantly. But I also think we always say there's a lot of real estate agents in New York City, but there's a small amount who do the most transactions. It's a small sandbox. And we say we like to play nice in the sandbox. And I think that that's a huge, like all of us sitting here, to have those personal relationships with these brokers, also to get real-time data. You know, in the city, we don't, upon contract signing, get the contract signed price. So to be able to pick up the phone and call Vince, to call Ryan, and ask, hey, what, you know, did you get close to your number? Just to have those relationships. And if we were awful to work with, or I don't know, you know, not kind to other brokers, not playing nice in this very small sandbox, I think that it would close the doors very quickly.
It's so short-sighted. I'm always surprised when I interact with, and there's a broker in particular who's one of like the top brokers in the city, and he's so nasty every time I know. You probably know who I'm talking about. And they needed
there were
a
many of
favor
them.
one time for me, and it was an easy like no. You know, like why? And most brokers I have great relationships with, but people are very, very short-sighted. I think we said this on the last podcast, but someone once said to me, your first client is not actually your client; it's the broker on the other side of the deal. So.
That's so true.
And I've said for years on this program and when I'm teaching also, love your co-broker.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
They're not all going to be sweet and nice, right? And some of them are going to be a little more difficult. I mean, some of the really obnoxious ones you say, okay, no. But for the most part, because you've got to call them in a deal. You've got to negotiate a price. You've got to negotiate, you know, simple things like, I need a financial statement, you know, and I know your client's giving you a hard time, but, you know, let's kind of talk through that. Whatever it might be, love your co-broker because that's going to make my world easy, and I'm assuming all of yours the same way. So what you put out there, what's the old expression? Whatever you put out there, you know, you expect, you know, you're going to get back, right? So put a little honey out there, and even when it's a little difficult sometimes, but you say, okay, I need to do this for the benefit of my buyer or my seller, and to make this transaction happen as smooth as it can.
Yeah.
Right?
Most of the relationships we make in the brokerage community are when we are doing a deal with that broker. There was someone who worked at Brown Harris Stevens. I told Stephanie this before. He was such a great broker. I said to him, you are so phenomenal. We had a lot of issues during the pandemic getting a deal closed. And he said to me, Danae, if you tell me the problem before it happens, I can figure out how to navigate around it. And as they came up, he was collaborative with me.
Exactly.
We always worked as a team, but still in the best interest of our buyer and seller. So I would say keep those relationships tight because you never know when you're going to need that person. Don't turn down a favor because I know Steph and I have asked a lot from other brokers and they have us. And like she said, always play nice in the sandbox because nobody wants to hire a broker who doesn't get along with brokerage community.
That
And
is so.
it's part of your network too. So I think it goes back to basic business skills that people forget about because you just never know when you're going to trip over someone again.
Well, the problem I think well said. You know, I think the problem in our industry is, you know, we fall under that independent contractor kind of umbrella where I don't have a boss, I don't work for anybody, I work for myself. I don't get paid unless I do something, you know, whatever. So that can, I'm not saying that it always does, but it can lead us down a path sometimes where we don't have the patience that we need to have with somebody, or we don't care how we speak to someone because, after all, this is my business. So leads me to the next question. So once you get past, you know, the co-brokerage and all that stuff, how do you maintain strong relationships with your clients, whether they're buyers or sellers, or in some cases renters, after you start working with them? Because what is our business really all about in the end? Referrals, right? You want them to come back to you when they're ready to sell. You want them to refer their loved ones or their friends or their family to you because you did a great job. What I find sometimes is agents don't have that personality or don't have that skill. They're very transactional. I think Danae said that before. Very transactional, and I'm dealing with one right now. My client is up in arms, and I want to kill this other broker, who shall remain nameless.
I hope they're not listening or watching.
I hope he is listening. Okay.
Name names.
Yeah, right. Because she's up in arms. I just helped her move in on Saturday. I'm a good guy, right? And he's like out to lunch. I don't know where he is, but it's kind of like, how do you do this? Because it isn't easy. So how do you? Because now my client is sort of mad at me, of course, right? That's how that works. But I'm damn well going to make sure that relationship stays. I mean, we're up to what, 6 transactions, the two of us. I love her to death. She's now become like family, but she's pissed because of other people. So you got to get back in there and fix that. How hard is that?
I would make it sound very flowery and not disclose the horrific background of what's happening.
Don't remind her that the heat doesn't work in the apartment.
That's is it a sale? Oh God. Yeah, you're in it. That's sorry. You're in it, and unfortunately the other broker bows out and says, I did not know any of this. It's not my problem. I'll be in the Hamptons or wherever.
It worked during the walkthrough.
Yeah, exactly. And then it's your problem. And how do you fix this situation?
I'm going to go there with a screwdriver and a wrench.
Well,
Probably.
that's Stephanie and I have fully painted people's apartments. I have grouted recently someone's bathroom. Yeah, I showed up with grout and said, I'm doing it myself.
We talked about this last week, how we sometimes have to do the undignified and the the crazy stuff just to keep the relationship or just to keep the deal in motion.
Just to keep the deal moving and the seller's happy and they see I'm doing everything possible and I've alerted them I am not a contractor, but I will do the best I can grouting this tile, then great.
I think it's communication. I think even if you're going through the trenches of it, I think how do you salvage the relationship? You just communicate. Even if there's no update right now, we're going through something and there's a issue. We haven't closed yet, but it needs to be fixed prior to closing, and it's kind of going slower than we would have hoped, and the time is ticking. And our buyers want an update, and the update is there's no update.
There is no update.
But
That's right.
That communication, I think, is saving the relationship, because I think the tendency would be for us to want to not text them, not call them, because I don't have any information. And I think that hurts us more than helps us, because they see you're in it with them. It is top of mind for you. And I think, to your point of empathy and creating these long-term relationships, I think it's saying, I'm in this with you. This is top of my mind. I'm checking in. I have no updates, but I will continue to ask for them.
And communication is so key, but so many people forget about it anymore. They hide behind their phones. They don't want to do it. They avoid it rather than confront it. And you're absolutely right. The communication is, I don't know where we are.
Right.
We're still in the same spot, but people avoid that. And I think that's an easy way to stand out in today's world. Stand out among the technologies. Go back to those basic human skills of like, hello, how are you?
What
It's
does
true. People, it's really.
what does the New York Lottery say all the time? You have to be in it to win it.
That's
right? If you don't buy a ticket, you have no. And people say to me, and I use this in class all the time. I'm never going to win the lottery. Blah, blah, blah. And I say, one simple question: when was the last time you bought a ticket? Well, I stopped buying tickets a long time ago because who's going to win? Well, then don't complain about not winning the lottery, because if you don't buy a ticket, you're not in it. So therefore, you're not going to win it. In our profession, it's the same thing, right? You've got to be in all. I'm project managing. It was freezing cold on Saturday. The coat on, the vest over it, the cap on, in and out of the building because it's like a townhouse kind of thing. Freezing all day long, but hey, you got to do what you got to do, right? We can go on and on and on about that.
I was just thinking about how cold it was Saturday and feeling very
Outrageous,
sorry for you.
and the wind was even more.
The wind
right?
was crazy. I didn't leave. I don't think I left the house.
What am I going to do with that box? Put it back on the truck. Mind you, I'm on the sidewalk because it's like, I want to go back inside, please, can I? Whatever. So I'm sure you had the same situation, right, with trying to maintain those relationships and making sure at all times. And listen, sometimes years go by before we are in touch with our client. I mean, doing another deal with them. We're always, sending them stuff and keeping them up to date, whatever, keeping top of mind in their inbox. Here's a market report, here's something new, or just Happy New Year, whatever, right?
Well, I was actually thinking about some of the stuff we were talking about earlier, specifically with your book and whatnot, and authenticity and everything. And so much of the way most brokers keep in touch is with market reports, listings, et cetera. And some of that's valuable, but I think one of the best ways to keep in touch is keeping in touch as a person. Happy 1-year anniversary at your home. Hey, I saw this new restaurant. I remember you liked blah, blah, blah cuisine in your neighborhood. You should check this out. And that is, I think, a better way to maintain.
I love it. I'm sorry. I love what he's saying.
But it's 1,000% true.
I know.
And I'm unusual. Like, I have very close relationships with several of my clients, I've had 3 different clients in the last 2 years house me at their vacation homes
Sure.
from LA to Europe.
Sure.
So social media is a good way to stay in touch. You see what's going on in people's lives. It's not just, hey, look what I sold. It's like, it's 3 a.m. and I'm eating mozzarella sticks. And your client's like, oh my God, I love it. No, but it's like you see
Mozzarella sticks at 3 a.m.
Yeah,
Okay, I'll do that.
There's no better time.
It works.
No, but people
With
see
a
the
martini.
whole picture, right?
Exactly.
Or
It's-
tequila.
Right, and it's I think it's not just about you want to demonstrate competence and your success and remind people about what you do. That really is important. But you couple that with your life and your whole picture, and then they kind of fall in love with the whole idea, and that's how you maintain a relationship.
It's so true. So getting back to the social media aspect of things or the marketing, one of the things that we all think about, it's been referenced here before, staying top of mind. Okay, so we are in a business where we need to always stay top of mind. Okay, with former clients, with just people out there on social media that may become clients, and we all get clients from social media from time to time. How do we then stay top of mind with the people that we've already worked with, or with the people that we want to? What is it that we do? What's that hook for agents on social media? And we all know there are way too many agents on social media. And somebody said here, this many agents, but this many do business. So what is should our strategy be to stay top of mind?
Well, I think it goes back to what Ryan said. I mean, first of all, social media, they're tools. That's all that it is. It's just tools for you
Correct.
to use. So it's being yourself and showing the side of you that isn't necessarily just selling the apartment, but who you are, because that's how you keep your clients. That's that personal connection. And we use this word authenticity, and it gets so, people pretend to be authentic. You really can't. But presenting other sides of yourself and being there, and at the same time that you're interspersing it. Because Gary Vaynerchuk he wrote this book several years ago called Jab, 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 Right Hook, which refers to boxing. I never boxed, so I had to learn what it was: jab, 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 right hook, right? That's kind of going for the kill. And he used the analogy for social media is to give, 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 and then ask. That you can't, if all you're doing is asking on social media, no one's going to pay attention to you because you're pushing. And if all you're doing is giving, if you don't ask, you don't get. So there's that 3-to-1 ratio where whether it's sharing some crazy information about what's happening in real estate, or it's just even talking about the neighborhoods that you sell your apartments in, like you said earlier about this is a great restaurant, and that personal part of you, what you do, because that is what's connecting. That's what's keeping people back. To me, and again, I've sold a lot of things in my life. Well, I've sold mostly advertising, but it put me in contact with every industry under the sun. But what you do, and my own experiences with brokers, is that a lot are very impersonal. They could care less about who you are. And I think it's more important than ever because we're all starved for human connection. And between the technology and this after effect, I could get really philosophical about this, but this after effect of the pandemic, all you have to do is walk down the street in Manhattan and see people, and they can't even walk without scrolling their Instagram account.
Or stepping on your shoes because their head is in TikTok. It's like, really?
So it's that what we really want this. Like even just this morning, just being able to sit down and have a conversation. I know Vince, but I never met the rest of you here. This is what we've been like since the beginning of time.
This is very true.
So does that answer your question? I mean, that's how I use it. So it's a little bit of what I want to push and a little bit of who I am.
You're 100% correct. Race
Without
against the
being
clock.
crazy.
We have to take a very short break. It's going to be very short. We will come right back. We're going to talk about some keys to success. Don't go anywhere. Okay, everybody, we are back. All right, so before we get into some keys to success, to all of you, how do you measure your success in your career? Because as we said before, there's a whole bunch of agents out there, and I always lose track of the amount of agents, but this many are doing deals, right? Or this many are consistently, successful year after year after year. Good markets, bad markets, uncertain markets like we are today. How do you measure your success, Ryan?
I think the obvious answer most people would think is saying, well, how much volume do you do? What's your number?
Right.
However, I think it's client retention and referral rate, because I've seen people who are currently doing larger numbers than I am that I'm winning clients from, which means that their prior clients were no longer happy with the service or competency that they provided. And if I'm growing, if I'm retaining and growing, that, in my opinion, is a better marker and more important indicator of success than total volume, because I'll catch up in the volume one day, but it's about
And it's true, and it's also price point, so you don't necessarily have to do 100 deals in a year. You can do 50, but based on the price point, for example, so that kind of counts as well. Well said. What do you guys, how do you measure the success? And you guys have had enormous success, and you're always out there doing something from my observation. How do you do that? I mean, how do you measure yourself? And in your mind, are you doing well enough, or do you always want to do more?
That's a good question. We talked about yesterday. Of course, we always want to do more. What broker doesn't? But at the same time, talking about measuring success and volume, what does that mean? Did we do one big deal, then it covered the 43 million? Did we do 36 deals and we had 36 different bosses?
Right.
So we have a system, an Excel sheet that actually helps us break down where the business came from, and it makes a pie chart. Then we look at the pie chart, I would say every month, and we say, okay, this is where the business came from. This is what we need to be doing. Something that brings us success is having appreciation happy hours, going and taking, referring agents for drinks, getting to know them, not just saying, I'm going to come to your office and present myself, or writing someone on Instagram and saying, hey, how are you? Let's meet for lunch. Let's get to know each other. After we sell to somebody or even rent because they turn into buyers, can we meet for lunch? We get to know them. I worked in advertising, and I did it for about 9 years. I was
Yes,
a
you
bridesmaid
did.
in 4 of my clients' weddings, and they're still my best friends. In real estate, I would say it's pretty much the same. After you have an experience with somebody where you sell them a property or rent them, it's a very emotional experience. You're digging deep into their finances. You know a lot about them. You're on the phone a lot. You usually leave friends. So I think that's how we measure it. Are we keeping in contact? Where are they coming from? I do sell a lot in one building, so I'm grateful for that. But otherwise, we do a lot of business really on a referral basis, and that's how we keep the business coming in.
You know, people say all the time, and, you know, we all know it because we're in it, but it's a people business, right? And it's the most intense people business for all the reasons we just talked about, you know, today. And you have to do it right. And you have to become friends if you can. I've become friends with, I would say, probably 90% of my clients. There are going to be always some that, you know, they're just transactional and they don't really care, whatever. But I can say, you know, in 22 years, I've become friends with most of my clients, and when I get that phone call after 5 years or 3 years, or now my son or my daughter want to buy something, or I know you don't do a lot of rentals, but would you help them rent something? It's like, of course, you know, absolutely. Why? I mean, why wouldn't I? So it's keeping and maintaining, you know, the relationships that you create and nurture through the years. I mean, these people have been on my list of, you know, my distribution list, whatever, for years. And whether they're in the market to buy something today is not even the issue, because they may say, you know, I just heard from my broker and, you know, he's blah, blah, blah. He's just put this listing up, or he's got something else, right? And it's word of mouth and it's referrals, because that's really what we do. Intense. I've always worked with people. I think everybody does in life, but not as intense as we do here. All right, some keys to success. I mean, we talked about digital marketing, Facebook, Instagram, email marketing, online advertising. I think you guys definitely do it well, so keep that up. You teach it so you understand the value of digital marketing. And I remember, you know, 22 years ago when I first started, I mean, we all had cell phones then, but, you know, they were these little things that were more of a hassle to use than anything else. They weren't intelligent. You couldn't get on the internet. You couldn't do anything. I was still running to a phone booth. I was still running back to the office to do another search, you know, whatever, right? Look at where we are today. So you want to, you know, talk about digital marketing. Content creation. When I'm teaching social media, I'm so intense with content creation. If you can't do that right, no one's going to listen to you. No one's going to read you. You know, I go on record all the time saying, no one reads in this business, okay? No one reads. This apartment is virtually staged. They show up and say, where's all the furniture?
Yes.
Hello, virtual staging. No one reads.
No, that's why
Every
I say the
time.
step. Don't worry about the copy.
Right.
Let's worry about the price and the photos.
I love writing the copy.
Yeah, the copy, the buyer usually does not fully read. They just don't. That's why
The brokers don't read either, because the brokers
Nobody
say,
reads it.
what happened to the
Nobody.
furniture? And I look at them
They
like,
scan.
you're the broker? You didn't find this listing? Really?
there a washer dryer?
Yeah, or there's an assessment, it's in the copy.
But it's so true. But the point is, if you're going to write that copy, and I think you should, it's got to be compelling, okay?
Yeah.
And not this long, right? Listing, how many, you look at listing thing, not this long.
And it's like, and the floors are this, and then the doorknobs are that, and I'm like, this is not why. I mean, it's nice, but like, yeah.
Taking the words
Get
out
to
of my
the
mouth.
point.
I
Right.
sold my own apartment and I made it look like a fact sheet. Because
Yes.
no one had to tell me wake up with the sunset, rise,
Yeah.
I got the fluff out. I'm like, here are the facts about the apartment. And I feel like that's how many listings should be.
Correct.
That's what they want to see. Bullet point it.
If I want to talk about fluff, excuse me 1 second, if I want to do the fluff thing, I'll do the fluff when I'm there.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
But the fluff is not going to bring me into that apartment. I want to know what the facts are: short, sweet, concise, sexy, whatever. That's going to, grab my attention. I'm going to go into that listing and say, oh, okay, so, wow, it also has this. And, oh, it does have a washer dryer. Right?
But sometimes
Whatever.
your sellers care. They want to see that fluff. Sometimes they say we write
They
it for the
do. They
sellers.
do. I know.
And you send it to them, and then they think, oh wow, yes, she
And
gets
they
it. I
edit
put
it.
the
So articulate,
marble
yeah.
bathrooms. Make sure, that it's up to the ceiling and wrapped around the whole thing. They want the work and the money they put in
Especially if they
demonstrated.
spent $1 million renovating. They want to know
Exactly.
everything that's in my house.
There's a great book called Smart Brevities by the founders of Axios.
Yes.
And they talk, and they actually literally walk you through what their formula is, which is really applicable as I'm listening to what you do. It's that, the main point, the bottom line, and then the go deeper. So if you want to know about the marble floors, you can have something click
See
through.
below
So
for 6 paragraphs on the
And
renovation.
The other thing I just wanted to add in is I think that you're going to see a lot of changes in content through generative AI. I've
Oh,
experimented with it.
yeah.
and
We're
it
about to
kinda
do an
blows
AI
me
program
away.
again.
It blows me away. But it can help you with content. It can help you with headlines. It can help you.
It can.
It's garbage in, garbage out, though. It's really about asking the right
Oh
questions.
my God, that is so true. You got to be really careful. Yes, it can help you, but it can also be a lot of stuff that's incorrect.
I love it for Instagram captions. I tried it for starting my copy on, one bedrooms or something where you're like, hey, it boasts a bathroom. I don't know what to say anymore. But an
really
Instagram
helps.
caption, it gives you all these hashtags, and then
You're so true.
you just kind of fiddle with it, and then instead of it taking you 30 minutes, which I pine over my Instagram captions, done is better than perfect. Danae always has to remind me of that because it takes me 17 years sometimes to write these captions. AI has been helpful for me with those
Wait a
Instagram
minute.
captions.
So done is better than perfect. Okay.
I always say that to her because she will go
Except
on
with
Instagram.
clients.
Yeah, except for clients. And she'll say, well, what about this? Oh, I changed the photo. I did this. I'm like, just put it out there.
Yeah.
It's not like you're posting anything inflammatory. Just write 1 bedroom, due to market. That's it.
I kind of agree. Photography and videography. Okay, we all know that pictures, tell the story. I would say probably since COVID, video has become back in the picture and just as important as it was before it disappeared for a couple of years. How crazy are you all with photography and with video? Because I work sometimes with agents who flip out over you can't have that in the picture. You got to take that out of the, and they're moving things all over the place. And I think, calm down. It's a picture. Calm down.
I think you can guess where we fall on the spectrum. Vince.
That's us.
I mean, it's like they're so anal. I hate to see the word, but it's like, wow, okay. Or I'll show somebody will look at my listing and a friend will call me. Why was that ashtray on the table? Why didn't you take that ashtray off the table? I'm like, hello, you like the listing or not?
Right. Exactly. No, I think I'm. It matters because it's because people don't read. It's because consumers in our world are so visually driven. So you have to nail it. That doesn't mean the ashtray actually matters, but it's better to be thorough than to make a mistake.
I agree with you. It's just, and I tend to do the same thing, especially, and I work with the same photographer all the time, for the most part when he's available, and he has become as bad as I have become.
Yeah.
Right.
Us,
And
yeah,
he's
ours
moving
too.
things around before I can even. I'm like, oh, okay, go for it, do it. We once turned a whole apartment around because the furniture placement was just so horrible. I mean, it really was. And so we turned everything around. Okay. And so when I sent very enthusiastically the photographs to my seller, she called me and yelled and screamed. What did you, there was a pied-à-terre, so they weren't in the apartment every day. What did you do to my apartment? Blah, 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 blah. You must turn that back. I said, well, and I tried to explain to her that it would not show well in picture. When you walked in, it was one of these, you walk in and you see the whole living room. She had this huge dining room table. On the other side of that was the living room. Like, you couldn't even tell there was a living room.
The way you live is frequently different than what looks best in a picture in many categories, actually. But like,
I
all
lost a
categories.
fingernail once moving right before our wedding, moving furniture because the beautiful big leather chair that looked beautiful in the apartment when you were showing it was taking up the entire camera lens,
Right.
and there was no way to get the window with the,
Yeah.
you know, you had to move it. So there you
And by the way, again, all of this is marketing. All of this is creating your presentation, whether it's a marketing pitch, whether it's
It's part of
the
it.
way you present, the way you present your apartment. This is our product, right? We are product salespeople, not salespeople, but product marketing people. So if you present your product well, you know, you're going to probably succeed in the end result, and the end result is always to sell it successfully. We talked a little bit about branding, a lot about branding. You know, I think it's very important for each of us as agents to clearly understand who we are, how we want to present ourselves and our brand, right? We all work for large companies. We all follow templates from our large company. They have specific brands that they like us to stick to, but we can still add our personal brand to that. Again, I keep pointing out, I love your stuff, I love his stuff. For that reason, I can see something personal in there, right? And that's what matters. And I didn't even know him. I've known you, but I didn't even know Ryan in the very beginning. And I kept saying, but this stuff is really good. And a lot of other people too, but this stuff is really good, right? And so now I continue to see, but now I know who he is. And I say, okay, well, that makes sense. I get that. And I hope that I can do the same thing. So branding, please, is super important. Market research, Ryan, alluded to that before. We don't want to kill people with too many numbers, too much data, but it is important. Okay, it's important for us to understand, and it's important for our people out there. Our chief economist sits right around the corner here. He's a frequent visitor to my show. Love him to death. I read his stuff religiously because I need to know, and I want to know what our data is telling us. Why is the market the way it is today? It is changing, hopefully. We're seeing a little bit more of a tick up for a whole host of reasons. Okay, but we need to talk to our clients about that who are still, I've got a lot of clients who want to sell, but, well, I don't know. The interest rates, because I'm going to buy something after I sell something, and even though I can make a lot of money, I don't want to double my payments, right? So you got that kind of mindset. But if you are armed with the data, I think you're going to be a lot better off. Adaptability and innovation, okay? We've got to adapt ourselves to the changing markets of our industry. Literally, I mean, in the first bunch of years that I was in this industry, the markets never changed. I mean, they were always the same, right? Now, in the last 4, 5, 6 years, every year is a different market. Every, markets, I should say, we don't have one market. How do you deal with that, right? For our own peace of mind, for our own psyche, right? Let alone trying to help our clients get through, whatever they need to get through. How do you do that? Got to spend time. You got to sit back. You got to spend time and plan. You can talk probably best out of all of us about marketing strategies and marketing plans and how important they are. How many agents in January sat down and did a marketing plan? I'd say, probably that many.
Oh, you need a strategy. Otherwise, you're just throwing a bunch of stuff up against the wall and hoping something's going to stick.
It's like when I was a salesperson, my sales manager would say, I need your sales plan. I need your sales plan. And I'd say, why? I'm going to do the same thing last year as I did this year. Write it down.
But we're also living in such uncertain times that it's hard to. You can plan a strategy out for a year, but it doesn't mean it's ever going to see the light of day.
Of course
because
not. And you got to tweak it.
Changing so much so quickly.
Well, that's the point of putting it in the front of your notebook. So every couple of days you look at it and say, oh, well, that worked. Well, that didn't work. Well, that didn't work yet. Maybe I need to tweak that, right? Maybe I need to change that just a little bit. It's the whole point of writing it down. So you remember what you get. Because when you get a little older, you start forgetting things. Willingness to experiment with innovative marketing strategies, okay? Just do it. What's the competition like that? We got another minute left. What's the competition like out there? Tell me quickly. What in your mind, even in this crazy marketplace, We have to be adaptable. But what's the competition like right now
Amongst other brokers?
amongst other brokers for listings and for buyers or for whomever?
You don't have any competition, though, do you, Ryan?
Of course not.
I didn't think so.
No, it's I think the funny thing about our profession is there's not a huge barrier to entry. It's not
That's right.
passing the bar and becoming a lawyer. It's not going to med school and spending 10 years of your life and a tremendous amount of money to pursue the profession. So because of that, there are so many people who decide to enter this field. 90% of them or 80%, whatever it is, don't make it a year or two.
Correct.
But that means there is constantly competition. That doesn't
Correct.
mean it's necessarily worthy adversaries, but it means that there's always a lot of volume. So I think it's always competitive.
And competition is good.
Yeah.
Competition keeps us focused, keeps us, walking that straight line, paying attention to competition for you.
I would say we've get every listing that we've pitched this year. At the same time, there was one listing we went on recently that we were like, don't call us, we'll call you. But I'm going to say, though,
I
one
love
or
those.
two. Yeah.
We've all been there.
Yeah, but otherwise, there's always competition. They always say, why is Corcoran doing this? Why do they have this in the Joie Times and we don't because it's a co-op and they're not buying it because Dubai and, Japan, they just, it's just not going to matter. There's always competition. So how do we set ourselves apart? We just try our best to be us and keep the core values of the relationship is number one. And that's it.
I like the competition, honestly, but it
Well, I do
makes
too.
me better. It sharpens our skill set. If we're pitching, to Ryan's point, and we are lucky enough to have won the pitches that we've done this year, which is fabulous, and hopefully we're not jinxing ourselves in any way. But
No, you're not.
it keeps you sharp. It keeps you focused. I come from a theater background. I love the competition, and there's enough for everybody. How many apartments do we have? We're not going to be right for every single person,
Yeah.
and that's okay.
And that's
There's
okay.
enough
And
pie for
unfortunately,
everybody.
we are out of talk time, but I will be right back with my thoughts for the week, so don't go anywhere. Okay, everybody, we're back with my thoughts for the week. So, a person's personal journey is unique and shaped by their experiences, their choices, and circumstances. It can involve physical, emotional, and spiritual growth, as well as setbacks and challenges. This journey may include various milestones such as graduating from school, starting a career, getting married, having children, and retiring. Go figure. It may also involve overcoming obstacles such as illness, loss, and personal struggles. Throughout their journey, a person may discover their passions and purposes and develop their values and beliefs. They may learn to navigate relationships, develop resilience, and find meaning and fulfillment in their lives. The path of a person's personal journey is not always linear and may involve detours, changes in direction, and unexpected twists and turns. However, each experience can contribute to their growth and development and ultimately shape who they are and who they become. A person's personal journey is a unique and ongoing process of growth, learning, and self-discovery shaped by their experiences, choices, and circumstances. So my personal journey is being documented in a book I'm writing. It is called Lost Between Fiction and a Dream. Follow my journey as a young boy dreaming of wanting to be a major movie star or TV star, but eventually meeting one and falling in love. In the end, our story was like something out of a Hollywood movie. That's my story, and I hope it will be out later this year. And that's our broadcast for today. Thanks to my guests for being here on set with me. You can follow me on Facebook, on Threads, Instagram, LinkedIn, or TikTok at Vince Rocco, or my website, thinkvince.com. John F. Kennedy said, "Those who dare to fail miserably can achieve greatly." And to my viewers and listeners all around the world, from all of us here at Talking New York Real Estate, thank you again for spending a part of your day with us, and I will see you next time. Goodbye, everybody.